So, Celine, thank you for joining us. And we're very much looking forward to your talk. Please tell us about the Michelangelo Foundation and your work there.
Yes, thank you very much. I will just share my screen. 1 second, sorry. Can you see it? Not yet. It's coming.
Yeah, there we go.
You can see it?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for welcoming me here today. And on behalf of the Michelangelo Foundation, I would like to thank the dieDAS team and director for giving us the opportunity to participate in this session. I'm delighted to be here for the next 45 minutes or so, probably. During which I intend to present the activities of the Michelangelo Foundation, and in particular, our latest Homo Faber Guide. At the Michelangelo Foundation, we are at the service of the men and women who dedicate their life to the practice of fine craftsmanship. These men and women use long-held traditions, skills, and knowledge to make beautiful objects of lasting values. No one will be surprised today if I say that we're living in uncertain time. I think Adib covered quite an extensive part of this. And I think that for the past month, many of us had to move towards a form of resilience. We needed to slow down and to take time to contemplate what was around us and what is around us. It pushed us to be more curious and to rediscover what is at our doorstep, which is surely essential to shape the world of tomorrow. At the Foundation, we believe that craftsmanship has a key role and a competitive advantage to play in defining this changing world. I will try in my presentation to show why we believe craftsmanship is important, how it is integrated in today's world and should continue to be in tomorrow's society, why we should preserve it, and how we contribute to it with our actions. The Michelangelo Foundation was created.
Celine, do you maybe have the microphone on your computer still on? Because there's some double, yeah, I'm hearing some sort of echo.
Okay.
Maybe
check. Sorry.
Just I think there may be a double.
Okay, let me just check.
Because I feel like there are two microphones involved.
If you click on the button where it says mute, you can select which microphone you would like to use.
Now it's off. Off. So put it back on. Yeah. No, you need the. Yeah. Say something. Yeah. Now it's good. Now? Yeah. Now we hear you. Maybe just continue. Maybe a little bit slower. I don't know. I just felt like there was a transition issue.
Is it better?
Yes, it sounds better now.
Okay, so I'll speak more quietly. So the Michelangelo Foundation was founded fairly recently in 2016 by two businessmen, Johan Rupert and Franco Coloni. Johan Rupert is the chairman of the luxury group Richemont, and he's been interested in craftsmanship since a very long time and has been following the work of Mr. Franco Coloni, who has created a foundation in Milan over 20 years ago called the Fondazione Coloni for master craftsmanship. With his foundation, Mr. Coloni works to preserve and to perpetuate fine craftsmanship in Italy especially, and with Mr. Rupert, they decided that this needed to be done at a European level. Okay. So the purpose of the Michelangelo Foundation is to revitalize the precious heritage of creativity and fine craftsmanship, first starting with Europe and then on a world scale. Our mission is to promote, to perpetuate, and to preserve fine craftsmanship, and also to strengthen the ties between the world of design and the world of the savoir-faire of crafts. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah. You sound good. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I heard myself cut. So we promote and communicate and educate widely on fine craftsmanship. And this in order to help artists to attract and retain new clients. When we ask and to every artisan what they're looking for and what they need, they always say clients, they always say work. So this is what we're trying to do with the promotion that we do for fine crafts. We preserve craftsmanship by listening to the makers and by understanding the economic threats that they're facing, and we try to find new solutions in order for them to be able to continue to practice their craft. And finally, we contribute to the perpetuation of craft by proposing innovative and transmission program for master artisans to share their knowledge with a young generation of passionate and designers. One of the first activities of the foundation when it was created was to discover throughout Europe the other association, governmental, paragovernmental organizations, schools, museums that were also engaged locally and at various levels in promoting and preserving craftsmanship. We did that because we believe that we're stronger together and that there's a necessity to push crafts in more or less in the same direction, but at least together. And this is why we built an international network of over 90 organizations today. And this network is present in over 30 countries. These organizations, they help us on various levels. So first of all, they help us understand the reality of the different countries. They help us understand how the craft sector is structured in a given country. And they help us on a very tangible aspect. They help us identify the extraordinary makers that are within their country. Together, we build projects and we do everything, more or less everything with them when we have to have a local action. In order to accomplish our mission, we have 5 main line of action. We have events, we have youth development programs, we have artisans program, publication, and last we have digital programs. In terms of event, our main event is the Biennale Homo Faber Crafting a More Human Future. It was held for the first time in Venice at Fondazione Giorgio Cini in 2018, and it is planned to return to Venice in September 2021. It was supposed to happen right now at this very moment, but unfortunately with the situation that we all know, it was pushed a year. At Homo Faber, we present the work of hundreds of master artisans and designers. We work with a panel of international curators offering a diversity of point of views and entry doors to discover crafts rather than a static or chronological exhibition approach. Homo Faber is also an opportunity to discover the skills and talents and creativity that goes with crafting objects by hand, and it gives the possibility to artisans to share in their contagious way their passion as they are present on site, and they give a demonstration and are able to discuss with the visitors. During the first edition of Homo Faber, we welcomed over 60,000 visitors over the course of 2 weeks, and we're hoping to be as successful in 2021. I already invite you to mark your agenda for next September. So the exhibition will be held from 9 to 26 of September 2021, again at Fondazione Giorgio Cini. With this new edition, we will celebrate European and Japanese crafts with 17 exhibitions and installations. So we will present the work of European masters as well as Japanese master and shine a spotlight on how Japan venerates craftsmanship and how its tradition has influenced and still influence European crafts. Together, the exhibition on European craft and on Japanese craft will showcase a wide array of expertise of material from traditional skills to endangered crafts with more cutting-edge contemporary technologies as well. As I mentioned, we have the youth development program. We believe that in order to preserve craftsmanship, we have to invest in the future generation of makers and designers. And it's for this reason and for this young generation that we developed our two educational programs. So we have the Young Ambassadors program and the Summer program. The Young Ambassadors program is a cultural knowledge-based program that is more on a theoretical level, and it allows about 100 students from all over Europe to participate in Faber. So we work with our net members, the schools mainly, in order to identify talented young artisans and designers. And we invite them to learn about European craft in the wider sense and to be immersed in the making of a big exhibition. As they act as the cultural mediator. For them, it's also an opportunity to network with peers and to meet potential future employers, such as artisans, maisons, designers, etc.
Celine, might I just interrupt for one moment and ask what age group are you focusing on in this student summer school program?
So it's between 80 and 32, more or less. So
between 18 and 32.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's secondary education. For the summer school, it's a more skill-based approach. So it's an initiative that we developed with our network members, and where we allow young artisans again and designers to learn beyond their area of expertise. The idea is to widen their knowledge about crafts and to see how it can inspire them and enrich their production. We create programs around crafts that are not necessarily taught in schools, and we focus also on actual and contemporary themes. To give you an example, last year we had a summer school on basket making in Portugal, which is a craft that is not at all practiced today, but that allowed us to touch upon very important and contemporary subjects such as circular economy, the cycle of life of a product, etc. So this was very interesting, and it speaks a lot to the students as well. And during this summer school, we put in contact master artisans with the young students, and we asked them to co-create pieces together. The master artisan share his knowledge without even using words, just showing the techniques as it's often done. And the idea is that the student brings as much to the artisan than the artisan brings to the students. With these two programs, we hope to create a virtuous cycle where we follow the life, if we can say, of the young makers. So the idea is that they first participate in our programs, then they will establish themselves, perhaps finish their study, establish themselves, be referenced as rising talents or rising stars. They will then perhaps participate in our exhibition, and in about 10 or 15 years or so be referenced as master artisans. And this is what we're hoping to be able to follow in the course of the next 10 years, let's say. I mentioned that we had also artisans program. One of them is a digital tool that is accessible on our website and that we have developed especially to formalize our selection of artisans for all our actions, so for Faber, but also for the guide and for all our activities. It was really created to be more transparent in the selection process and to lean toward a certain objectivity when we select artisans. We also needed to respond to the demand of artisans that were asking us to, and we needed to find a way to define what we meant when we talked about craftsmanship excellency, which is what we focus on. So this tool, it's basically a detailed questionnaire that measures accurately to what extent an artisan's fulfilled the criteria for excellence that we have set in the foundation, and it assesses if an artisan can join the foundation or if it meets the standards of the foundation. It offers a unique profiling of the art, clearly identify where there's room for improvement and where there is expertise and competence. I'm guessing you might be wondering what I mean by craftsmanship excellency and what are these criteria. So I will move towards that. So when we mention the notion of excellence, for us, it's extremely important because we believe that it's by pushing and showing excellence that we will bring craft forward, and that we will avoid to lose some techniques and some savoir-faire. So we defined the excellence according to our 11 criteria that you can see on this slide. These criteria were established in a book called The Master's Touch that was written by our executive director and two researchers, Giulietta Comerci and Giovanna Marchello. And what this book does, basically, it lays the groundwork to define a common language, which for us was very necessary because we started to talk to museums, to schools, to governmental and entities, talking about craft, imagine thousands of things. And we focus on a very, perhaps on a very niche parts of craft. So we needed to be backed with a language, a definition that was strong and that we could communicate on. So the 11 criteria, of course, they didn't come out of nowhere. They came out of a comparative research of European legislations and laws around the craft sector, and also from interviews of master artisans. So these criteria, they define what it takes for an artisan to lean towards excellency. And they encompass notions such as talent, training, creativity, innovation, competence, originality, savoir-faire, interpretation, tradition, authenticity, and territory. These criteria are also the values of the foundation, and in a broader sense, they help us explain the importance of craft in today's world, why it is capital to preserve them and see them flourish in the world of tomorrow. I will give you just 2 or 3 examples of these criteria in order to for you to understand a bit more how it works, and I have tried to select criteria that could be linked to the subject of the summit as well. So the first criteria is savoir-faire. We felt that the definition was stronger and more accurate in French when we translate it in English, so we left it in French. And savoir-faire refers to the artisan's perfect command and knowledge of the technique and material and culture of his crafts. It's his ability to work manually and to understand how to work manually within the rule of his crafts. An artisan that has strong savoir-faire understands how to prepare and how to work with the material he has at hand. And he also understands that time is precious and that there are no shortcuts to create pieces of excellence. So savoir-faire encompasses all of these notions of being able to work within the rule of a craft, but also respect the time of the making. Here on this slide, you have an example with the Italian glassblower Simone Crestani. And he combines his expert knowledge of glassmaking techniques with intelligence and skills. He spent over 10 years learning the rule of glassmaking as an apprentice, so it's a very long time, at a master glassmaker factory called Massimo Leonardo in the Veneto region. Today, he's now internationally renowned for the technique of flame working, and he continues to carry extensive research and then use the skill that he acquired in his research to create glass sculpture exactly. So the ability of the artisan to create exactly what he had in mind is the demonstration of excellent savoir-faire. The second criteria I would like to talk about is tradition. So at first, the word tradition often invokes an idea of the past, but actually it describes the dynamic and constant renewal of cumulative knowledge. It's something that is handed down from generation to generation, and that is communicated but never standardized. So it's not repeating something with the same gesture over and over again. It's a way to transfer knowledge and to have the craft and the technique evolve in a sense that is right for today's world. To give you an example, or I didn't, sorry. To give you an example, here is the work of Daniel Lopez Obrero. He's the third generation of his family to perfect the craft of leather embossing and engraving. And it's a craft that is traditional from the region of Cordoban, which is in Spain. And it's a craft that was on the edge of disappearing when his grandparents moved to the Cordoban region. They were artists and they started working with this technique again, and slowly started to bring back this tradition and this technique to the region. Daniel and his brother Carlos are now responsible for the workshop, and they continue to perpetuate this skill, but also to develop new ways of working in order to respond to the demands of the clients of today.
I'm sorry, Celine, I didn't catch what this craft is called.
It's leather engraving and embossing.
Embossing.
And it's traditional from the region of Cordoban, which is a region in Spain. The last criteria to present was the notion of story. So the notion of craftsmanship is the expression of it's quite clear. It's the expression of the history and of the evolution of time, and it relates to the values that are created by a community and that has a specific heritage. So the specific heritage is usually based on that community's knowledge and on the area with the natural and distinctive material that you can find in such an area as well. Here on the pictures, you have an example of the island, the Scottish island of Lewis, where the world-renowned Harris Reed is weaved. And there, weaving Harris Reed is more of a way of life, if you can say, that is handed down from generation to generation, and that is really linked to the terroir of the place and to the territory. So people live with the animal. They bring the wool to the mill, just like in Switzerland, in some region of Switzerland or in France, you could bring your milk if you have cows and you have too much milk to the fruiterie to do lactose-based product. So it works in the same way. It's this notion of terroir that is very strong in maybe in the culinary world that we find also in the craft world. Today, there's only 3 mills left that are making Harris Reed, and here is one of them. And they continue to use traditional techniques to produce fabric that are more adapted to contemporary use. In order to, so this is all for the values of the foundation. In order to support further artisans in skill development, we are currently working on a project that we call the Green List. The Green List is a pedagogical tool for artisans to reflect on and improve their environmental footprint in their activities, of course, and through a lengthy questionnaire with about 200 questions, we're able to gain visibility and insights and verified information on subjects such as sourcing, production, distribution, sales, and end of life of the product. And the idea is to do an état des lieux and then to be able to provide immediate feedback, but also personalized mentoring and some sort of recommendation to improve the way they work. Now that you know more or less everything about the foundation, I would like to move to our latest project, which is the Homo Faber Guide, and which we just launched on Thursday. I'll show you just a video quickly. And we've been working on this project for the past 2 years. So for us, last week was a big momentum. And a bit more. 1 second. Can you still see my screen? Yeah.
We still see your presentation.
Ah. You still see my presentation. Okay.
I'm happy to share your video otherwise.
Okay, maybe you can share it in the chat, and I can just talk about it. It's fine for me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if I can go back.
So let me ask you something about the green book that you were just talking. Is it the green book? Is that what it was called?
The green list.
Green list. I'm sorry.
And
to what extent is the consciousness sort of material and also the maybe the changes of the environment that affect materials that traditional craftsmen employ an issue in your selection process?
So the first focus, so one of the criteria for excellence is territory, as I mentioned, which is very much focused on material and on material from a certain region where the artisan is based within the green list, but it's not eliminatory. Whereas the green list, the idea is to help artisans to tend toward a more sustainable practice. I mean, with the artisans we work with, we have a bit of everything. We have master artisans that don't even realize that what they do is extremely responsible in terms of sustainability. We have artisans that think that by crafts are more sustainable than the industry, which of course it or probably is. But we have not, I don't think that we have yet met an artisan that told us that because of climate change or because of sustainability issues, he is starting to have difficulty in sourcing materials. So we haven't faced this yet. Now we're still in the with the green list. We're still in the testing phase. So we are working with a core group of artisan, and then the project will be launched later in 2020, early 2021.
Okay, interesting. Thank you.
Celine, I'm just going to share your MP4 here. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
We can skip the video if it's too tedious. Huh? It's okay.
No, it's perfectly fine. Just one sec. Oh, damn. Sorry. Now we go.
What is this?
So I'll explain everything. Do you still see my screen or not?
No, we see you.
Okay. Let's see if I can go back. So this was our teaser video on the Home of Faber guide. So as I mentioned, the project launched this past Thursday. It's my screen now, right? Okay. So maybe you have understood, maybe not, but the Home of Faber guide is an original digital platform to help users find a selection of the best of fine craftsmanship in Europe. And it's a mapping of the entire ecosystem around craft, or it will be in the future at least. The idea is to allow craft lovers, craft enthusiasts, collectors, potential clients, gallerists, and so on, to connect with the world of crafts at many different levels. It's a geolocalized tool. And it's something that anybody who is preoccupied with the current situation, I mean, that it can be linked to COVID and the travel situation, or to a more general approach towards being more responsible in the way we travel, but it's a tool for everybody to be able to discover what is our doorstep and what is geographically close to us. So what is around the corner, as the tagline mentions. And it's also a way to allow for digital travel, which I think with the period we just faced is something that we all probably started doing. The idea is that it shines a light on a sector that is particularly conscious about sustainability issues, and that it allow a public that wants to know more about what is next door, what I can do if I stay in my country, if I stay in my neighborhood, in my city, etc. So maybe the easiest way for you to do it is to go online, check the Homo Faber guide, or download the application as it's available on Google Play and the Apple Store. You can create an account, but it's not something mandatory, so you can access the guide like this. If you create an account, you have the possibility to like, save, and share your favorite artisans, and it's something that is free of charge for everybody and for the users and for the makers that are referenced. In terms of content, today, the guide has over 650 artisans with 2 categories: master artisans, which are the artisans that correspond to the notion of excellence that I mentioned before, and rising stars that are young talents that tends toward master craftsmanship and where we can see great hope, and we're hoping that they will continue to practice. You also have manufactories, which is a reality in the craft sector. You have museums, you have galleries, shops, and you have experiences. The idea is also to convert the audience to the art of making and the visiting workshops, visiting exhibition, and all of this in 25 countries today. All of the artisans are recommended and endorsed by our international network and by city ambassadors. And as I mentioned, it's a platform that will evolve in time with new content added on a weekly basis. The objective is qualitative, so it's always to keep this notion of excellence, but it's also to cover Europe by the end of 2021. Which seems like it's not a lot, but actually Europe is so rich in terms of crafts that there's so much to do. We have 3 categories on the guide, but I'll enter a bit more in this step. As I mentioned, all of the artisans and the makers and the galleries, the shops are recommended by ambassadors. So the ambassadors are city ambassadors, that they are such as curators, designers, gallerists, journalists that have something to say and that have a strong link to crafts. So for example, for the city of Munich, we have German designer Sebastian Herkner, who has provided the best addresses and the best artisans he's been working with. And for the country ambassadors, as I mentioned, it's our network members, and they know the artisans in their country better than anyone, and they vet the quality of these artisans as they visit their workshop, etc. So for us, it's a guarantee that the level is also respected. In terms of the section, so you're able to discover crafts with profiles for each artisan, which include contact information, so you can contact the artisan directly. You have an interview, so it's also an editorial project. You have a photo gallery and an Instagram feed, and it's quite addictive already, so you can move from one artisan to discover different stories. You are able to visit fine collections, so as a tool, of course, we provide a mapping of European museums and galleries. And the idea is also to show to people that are potentially interested in craft where they can buy such crafts. And finally, as I mentioned, there's the experience section where the users are able to visit and to discover courses on crafts and to experience crafts firsthand. I wanted to show you how to navigate it, but I think I will skip this part, giving the video.
I think everyone can sort of
yeah, I think it's quite
the internet.
exactly.
I think we can count on that nowadays.
Exactly. So I'm not going to show you this. this is just to say, I don't know if we have artisans in the audience, but in case of interest, we are always looking for new talents. So artisans can apply on via our website or by writing to our general mailbox. And I think this is all for me. Just to wrap up, I would like to say that in a time where technology seems to be replacing a lot of things, and we work and we're engaged in the promotion of what only talent and manual work can achieve. At the foundation, we use technology, of course, and we use the digital as a mean of communication, just like artisans use technology and tools as a prolongation of their hand. We believe that craftsmanship is important and a vehicle of culture. It represents for us an essential social link, even an integration link. And it brings attractivity to a sector, to a territory. It's a pool for employment. And it gives also meaning to a generation of a younger generation that wish to find and practice something with meaning instead of maybe working on a computer, etc. So, voilà, I think that for all these reasons, we have a responsibility to maintain fine craftsmanship for tomorrow's world.
Absolutely, and thank you very much, Celine, for this very insightful presentation. Glenn, I'm just going to jump in maybe to explain to our audience what the connection is between dieDAS Design Academy Zalek and the Michelangelo Foundation, because we are very happy that we have a cooperation going on. And the Michelangelo Foundation is a network partner for us. As we are a very young academy and institution, as are you, but we are even younger. I think we are all very aware of the fact that helping each other network and source and discuss, debate, and inspire is very important. Now, our main focus is design, craft, and architecture. So crafts are an important part of the Design Academy Zalek, maybe slightly less focused on the purely traditional crafts, but still the craft itself employed for new ideas and developments. So there's always a bridge between the craft tradition and the craft reinterpretation or development into other fields. So I just wanted to mention that in case there was just a question what the connection is between the dieDAS and the Michelangelo Foundation. And I'm very impressed at how much you have put together over the past few years, and very happy for the large endowment the Michelangelo Foundation must have, because it really is astounding what you have managed to put together. No? What do you think?
Me, I'm personally always impressed by what you have done as well. No, it's true that I think we're a very small team, but a very passionate team, which does a lot. It's only 10 of us at the foundation, and we have the chance to have a lot of freedom and to have the trust of our founders. And what is beautiful, and I think what is beautiful with your organization as well, is that for my part, at least, I started at the very beginning of the foundation, almost at the beginning of the foundation, and it was a white paper, so there's everything to do, and it's extremely interesting, of course.
Yeah, of course. No, I was also very impressed and just interested to learn about the scope of what you're doing. I did, in fact, have a question. Oh, you don't hear us? Huh. You don't hear me?
I hear you when your voice is distorted.
Oh, right. Okay.
Now it's better.
Okay, good. I just wanted to ask about the scope of what you're doing with the foundation. We actually had one question from Felekşan Onar, who's a friend of mine, artist in Turkey, as to whether you have any activities in Turkey. But I'm also wondering about other programs in other countries. Well, there's the World Crafts Council, which of course is a big umbrella organization, and also wondering about the intangible cultural properties, so-called Living National Treasure program in Japan. So how do you fit into the international picture?
Yeah, so today, just to reply to the first question, today we're not active in Turkey. We focused for the first edition of Homo Faber on political, a bit more than political Europe, let's put it that way. And the idea is now to explore geographical Europe it's a big task. We'll be working with ETF, which is the European Training Foundation, to extend our work towards the East as well. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch the second part of the question because it was also distorted. So if you
Well, I will say it's nice that you can keep England in your plans. Because they won't be. Well, just a joke about Brexit. Oh, you can't hear me. Arne,
no,
can you?
I hear you perfectly. I think maybe it's the headset. Somehow there's some complication with the headset, I think, because I hear you perfectly.
But I hear you perfectly, Anne, as well.
But I have no headset. But Glenn now has some.
So it's our headsets, Glenn,
No,
Glenn
I think
and myself.
two headsets together are somehow not functioning properly.
Okay,
Could be.
That's the challenge.
Let me see.
So, Celine, tell us something.
Can you hear me now? Still or? Yes.
No,
we don't.
No, it's gone. Your microphone on.
Try again, Celine. No. No luck today.
You can switch the mic if you click on the mute button, and then just same as system, for example, select that. Right next to your mute button, there's this little arrow.
Now you should.
Now we hear you.
Perfect.
Yeah. And can you hear me any better, Celine?
I can hear you better now.
Great. I was just asking about how the Michelangelo Foundation fits into the international picture. So thinking about the World Crafts Council, about the Living National Treasure program in Japan, etc.
So we work very closely with the World Craft Council Europe at the moment, as we took Europe as a starting point. We work with almost all the organization of the World Craft Council Europe. They're almost all part of our network. And in terms of international collaboration, for Homo Faber, we've been in close touch with a certain number of institutions in Japan. The Japan Foundation is one of our partners. One of the curators of the exhibition is Naoto Fukuzawa, who is the director and curator of the Folklore Museum in Tokyo as well. So we do have institutional link on an international level, but at the moment it's only Japan as we're working on Homo Faber. We have the ambition to extend to the rest of the world in the future, but we still have a lot to do in Europe.
Yeah, okay. And you closed with a very interesting point, which was that, in fact, technology and traditional crafts support one another very well, which is, very observable even in, online selling or retail strategies. Etsy was an early example of that. And certainly here in America and elsewhere, many artisans are making their living because they can sell online over great distances, which is quite interesting. You might initially think technology and craft are enemies, but obviously they're not in this case. I was wondering also, though, to Arne's point about how you think about tradition in relation to experimentation and to things that might seem more like fine art practice or avant-garde practice. So how does the Michelangelo Foundation think about that relationship?
So innovation is one of the criteria for excellence, as well as creativity. So, I mean, when we talk about craft, we also talk about craft in a broad sense. We're extremely interested, and our founders are extremely interested in the functionality of craft and craft as a comparative advantage in Europe against certain technology advancement or towards certain other territories. Our founders believe that we have tradition that should stay alive and that cannot be replaced by the machine. That being said, for example, at Homo Faber, we have a room dedicated to mobility and to innovation in crafts. And we look at how far can craft work with innovation to produce, for example, racing cars or such things. So we're not limited to endangered or traditional craft, but at the same time, we cannot exclude them because we work to preserve crafts and to preserve all forms of crafts. So I mean, I don't think that, as I mentioned, I don't think that we don't think that tradition and innovation are against each other. Tradition is actually the innovation of a certain given time. What seems traditional for us today was back in time probably extremely innovative. So, and probably that what we think is extremely innovative today will be completely seen as traditional or not so interesting or innovative in a few years. So really think that they go hand in hand. In terms of fine arts, we do promote also pieces of art. We have one of our curators at Faber who's called Jean Blanchard, and he always gives the example that you have art on one side, you have craft on the other side, and that's at the foundation. And when we talk about craftsmanship excellence, we look for the in between, the top of this pyramid, if you want. So some artists are more material based and they use technique in an amazing manner. Some contemporary artists work with artisans in order to produce their work. A bit like designers, we think that it's perhaps too bad that the artisan is not always mentioned and that he doesn't gain visibility. And we do have also programs in order to change that or find ways for artisans and designers to collaborate.
We had some very interesting fellows here for our inaugural fellowship over the past week, and one of them, who is still a student of architecture and architectural history, is also a really fantastic craftsman with wood. And I would say, from the pieces I've seen that he has produced with his own hands, honestly, close to a master craftsman, at least a rising star. And nonetheless, his quest is not the preservation of any form of traditional craftsmanship. His quest is using his knowledge of craft and his hands and the material to actually develop thought-provoking products from woods that in some way have been discarded or are waste, to developing things that make you pensive and thoughtful. So the craft is very much an element of what he's actually doing, but it is employed to open up new perspectives and ask questions. So how would you consider that kind of an approach?
That's also the interesting thing, because of course, not of course, but as a Swiss organization, or an organization based in Switzerland at least, where there's a very strong apprenticeship system, in Italy there's this tradition of handmade and of craft in a very traditional and easy to define way. Same in France, probably same in Spain. So for a certain number of countries in Europe, it's extremely, the craftsman is the maker, he's creative or not, but he makes something from A to Z. When we started exploring the rest of Europe, even for example, going just to the Netherlands, we found that the notion of master craftsmanship is not something that is necessarily understood as we thought it would. That's also why we decided that there was a need to define, to have a common definition when we spoke about craft. So this is why we created, why the master statue was created as well. But also, for example, if you go to Romania or to Poland, you have these designers that are actually also makers. And the reason for that are, because of the political situation and the fact that the countries were so close and turned toward the interior. So they had to find solution to produce. So in some places, what we call artisans are actually designers, or they are artists. We put the etiquette, the label of the artisan, but we are as interested in someone who works in traditional craft and master the techniques and define himself as a craftsman, as a designer that uses techniques to share messages or to create to produce in a more responsible manner. For example, we have an artisan who's also a designer who used the trunk of olive trees that are usually burnt Instead, he recuperates them and he creates furniture out of it. But he's a designer, but he found that it was too bad to waste this material, that he should find a way for himself to use this material and to work with this material. And this is how it started. But as a matter of fact, he's a designer in the beginning. So we also have these mixed profile. It's just that by an abus de langage, I say craftsman, artisan, maker, but it's very much wider than this.
So the olive tree is almost like a material. It's a farming materials ecology.
Yeah, there we go. I always think that the main thing is not to focus on the terminology, but to focus on the human capabilities that we're talking about, which is to say skill, knowledge of the materials, and understanding of place and the past. And you know, what housing you place on that, or even in some ways what you do with that set of capabilities is maybe not the central concern. The central concern is to make sure that those capabilities are still there. I'm always struck by the fact too that you know, the converse of what you were saying, Arna, which is that you have someone like Celine, I think you were talking about, who's, you know, wildly skilled but also very experimental. You know, the sort of opposite number to that would be somebody from a tradition who is trying to keep the practice intact and make it not change. And it turns out that it takes all kinds of crazy innovation to do that because, of course, the prevailing situation is so volatile. So to actually keep producing that same thing so that it is to the same standard, same materials, same processes year after year in the face of the winds of history is very, very challenging. And I often find that the most traditional artisans on a day-to-day basis are the ones that are scrambling the most to try to work out how they're going to, you know, keep it right.
In our selection process for the fellows that we like to invite to the Design Academy Zalek, the craftsmen that we would be wanting to include in our program are craftsmen or craftswomen that have a certain, how shall I say, maybe also political, inspirational perspective onto the world they live in. So I think for us, somebody that does something because it's always been done like that, but has never really asked the essential questions that are facing our society and our ecology and our world today, is someone that would not necessarily, I think, fit into the group of people that we're trying to assemble here. So we have, it rhymes in German, it's called Gestaltung mit Haltung, which means designing or creating with a certain position, with a certain, with a certain concept in a way, but it's a concept that has to do with the pressing questions of the time we live in. And I think that can be a very traditional craftsman, but it can also be a very innovative designer. I fully agree with you. Both is absolutely possible. And we find here in Germany that luckily, the traditional crafts that, as you mentioned, are highly apprenticed and the structures are still very much based on the historic structures of the almost Middle Ages, and where you do your apprenticeship programs, that there are growing numbers of young people, again, interested in becoming craftsmen and not necessarily going to university, but most of them want to become craftsmen with questions in their mind. They come because they have a position, because they think of things, and they have political issues, they have environmental issues, and that's one of the reasons they're turning to craft, actually, because that is a place where they find answers, or at least satisfying surrounding and environment for the kind of life they want to be living. So I think
most of the students and the participants in our educational program are very conscious about sustainability issues, or have something to say. It's not, I mean, in Switzerland, maybe less, but in France, if people used to say, if you're not good at school, you'll do an apprenticeship. That's something that people used to say. It's something that it has completely changed. I mean, in Switzerland, it was never really like that, I believe. And it's a conscious choice to practice a craft or to learn a technique. It's not something that you do just to follow what your father did. anymore. It's really how to say. Yeah.
It's a way of life, isn't it? It's a decision for a certain way of life, to live with a material, to honor a material, to work and live with your hands in a way and creating something. I think it has a lot to do with your vision of the life you want to lead and your respect for the things that you're dealing with.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And you might. At dieDAS, I think it makes sense to focus on people that are asking questions without taking much for granted and sort of probing, exploring things, without hesitation going into areas of the speculative. But you might also say that the mere practice of an intact craft has a kind of politics to it, small p politics, just by virtue of its insistence that the preservation of that activity is worthwhile, might or might not be environmental, depending what it is. Ceramics struggles with environmental, but the basic point is that the mere possibility of doing that work and keeping those capabilities alive in the culture is so important. And it seems like that's what the foundation is really focused on. So it's great, inspiring work in that sense.
And very motivating, because your whole infrastructure, your communication is so fresh and contemporary, and it's sort of brushed away the potential, how shall I say, sort of cloud of being old-fashioned or untimely that may have been associated with certain crafts. If you go through some streets in Paris or Seville or Naples, you see these little craftsmen's workshops, and they have this very dusty, old-fashioned kind of feeling to them. But that's obviously not all. And I think the way you are presenting your work is very motivating and fresh and dynamic, and that's lovely.
Yeah, we really believe that we can take the communication codes of today and to speak to a young generation, but also to the broader generation, that it's that there's a need to dust away what is around craft, because these men and women actually do things that are extremely innovative or that are extremely impressive, but often, some of them, they know very well how to communicate, some of them not at all. So as a foundation, it's also our mission to give a voice and to show the diversity of craft that you can find, and to deliver it to a broader audience, which is why the application was developed as well.
I think also focusing on that emerging generation too is so important, because they're precisely the ones that need to carry it forward. And they have potentially a lot of distractions. So it's great that you're focusing on that.
Yes, and irrespective of the focus we take as a very small institution here in Germany with 12 to 16 fellows, which is obviously a selected group, I'm very much, my personal background is in heritage and conservation, so I'm very much experienced with the search for traditional crafts that have to do with building traditions that are often dying out. We have whole regions in this country where you can't find somebody to make a terrazzo floor anymore, because it was something that in the 19th century was prolific, and it's just a good, solid craft. And now you really have to look hard to find people who are doing that. And only, if you're lucky, there will be a young person following that tradition and wanting to learn that craft again, So I think it's also vitally important, because we lose a lot of knowledge and a lot of, I think, civilization in a way, or attributes of the civilization that we've built over the past 2,000 years, if we don't find ways for craft to subsist, but also for craft to help us answer questions of our generation and the generations to come. That's why I think the challenge is really also to use the traditional craftsmanships for the questions of today, and promote development in the mind, but also in the making.
Well, this seems like a great anticipation of our topic for tomorrow, which of course is material ecologies and architectures and communities, and that includes terrazzo, I suppose, Arne. So I would propose that perhaps we'll draw it to a close there for today. As I said, please join us again tomorrow at, well, let's see, at 1900 hours in Europe, which is to say 11 o'clock here. So, that's right, isn't it?
Isn't it 6 hours? Is it
1300 hours, 1 o'clock here, yes. Sorry, the math is beyond me.
You just finished reading the New York Times, the Sunday
exactly.
Times, and you can
There we go, okay. And I guess it leaves us for us just to thank Celine Vogt again very much, and also, of course, your colleagues at the foundation. Thanks to all of them for the work they've been doing. And as Arne says, it's very inspiring stuff.
Thanks a lot. Have a
discussion.
lovely evening or day, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow, Glenn.
Yes, absolutely.
Tomorrow, Berta, and maybe you'll be around to witness the very exciting panel talk tomorrow, Celine. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Bye.
Goodbye.